Good day, YouTube. Today's topic is I truly believe that the Air Force Reserve is or offers endless opportunities. I've talked about the Air Force Reserve. I've talked about all of the options in the Air Force Reserve and all the statuses. So this video is not necessarily about that. If you want to see those videos, just go to my channel and click on Reserve to see what videos come up, and that's what you'll see is some of that background. When I say endless opportunities, here's what I'm talking about. In 2006, the Air Force had a reduction in force, so I had to leave active duty. I didn't know much about the Air Force Reserve or Guard, but my experiences with the Reserve, so that's what I'll talk about. And then somebody said, you have to speak with an in-service recruiter for the Air Force about the Air Force Reserve. And I said, well, I didn't know that that was an option because I'm being forced out because the Air Force had a reduction in force. And they're like, yeah, you have that option. And I was like, great. Because my goal right around that time was at 10 years in the Air Force was to do 20 years minimum of active duty time or in the Air Force. So when the Air Force Reserve was an option, I was very happy because I was going back to Colorado Springs. I got a job as an Air Force civilian working on the base, and to keep some of those benefits, such as having your ID card and still serve part-time, was something that made me very happy. I joined the Air Force Reserve in January of 2007. I was on contract for 2 years, and I would work with the active duty side. I was an IMA, which stands for Individual Mobilized Augmentee. I worked on behalf of the Air Force Reserve for active duty. I did that for 2 years, and then I learned a little bit more, and then I went in as a traditional reservist. I did that for about 6 years. I got promoted. When I say endless opportunities, what am I talking about? Specifically is, you've probably heard, or if you haven't, you will now, the term citizen airman. What that means is that an individual is a citizen, a civilian, and at the same time an airman. That's the purpose of a reservist. So I had my civilian job, and then I had my part-time Air Force Reserve job, which I loved because I went right into it and got to wear the uniform and work with airmen of all ranks as well, just like I did when I was on active duty. An example of an opportunity is you get to learn more, you get to do the job for the Air Force part-time. If you want to deploy, you have to seek out a deployment opportunity, and they're out there. And hopefully you get selected and you get to do that as well. And then you come home and you go back to your civilian life. That's an example of citizen airman. So you're both. In 2009, I was asked if I wanted to attend professional military education, PME, as a captain. And that was Squadron Officer School. And of course I said, yes, how do you make that happen? I want to go. So I went on active duty for 5 weeks to complete my professional military education. It was a good opportunity for me to get reblued by being with active duty members and other reservists as well in the Air Force. So for 5 weeks, I left my civilian job, the Air Force, and I went to go get some training, and it was good, and I met good people, and I learned a lot. So it was a good benefit as well. Another opportunity is annual tour. Annual tour is when you're a reservist, you have to go somewhere for 2 years, or it could be in your base. Most of the time for me, it was on Peterson Air Force Base, or I would go TDY, temporary duty, to other conferences or seminars, or work at another base. When I was a major as a traditional reservist, they asked if I wanted to go to Japan or England as one location to do my annual tour. Annual tour is when you do your 2 weeks, you work with active duty. And of course I said yes. I said, I'd rather go to England first. If not, I'll go to Japan. Wherever you send me is fine. I went to England for 2 weeks, worked with active duty people. It was really quick. It was 2 weeks. 2 weeks fly by. But, you know, we as reservists definitely augment the active duty side. And that's exactly what happened. When we went to England, they had a lot of individuals that had deployed, so they were short. So the team that I went with went to England to augment, to provide support for the people that they had been missing. Now, in 2015, I applied for an AGR job, which is Active Guard Reserve. And that is another opportunity there. So what I did is I took 3 years of military leave from my civilian job. In other words, military absence. I'm absent from my civilian job even right now because I'm performing active duty time for the Air Force Reserve. And that is a 3-year tour. It started in May of 2015. It will end in May of 2018. And that's great because I'm getting points. I'm learning. I'm doing a lot of great things for the Air Force Reserve on active duty. And I really enjoyed this tour as well. What's next? Well, I could go back to being an IMA or a TR, but I've decided that I'm going to retire. I'm sure you already know that if you've seen any of my other videos. I'm going to retire and do Air Force civil service. My job is being held. And that's what I'm going to do for 11 years before I retire in 2028 from the workforce, if I want to, as a civilian. By then, I should have 2 pensions, the Air Force Reserve pension and the civil service for the Air Force. There are endless opportunities, especially if you're an individual who looks for opportunities, who asks questions, who says, hey, what's that? I want to do that, and then you pursue that. So there are definitely a lot of opportunities in the Air Force Reserve, endless opportunities. If I wanted to teach at the Air Force Academy just south of where I am right now, I would be able to apply and do that. So there are many examples that I haven't even talked about where I could do, or you could do, if you are an Air Force reservist. Sometimes and often people call me and say, hey, I'm not sure if I should go active duty or go reserve or guard. Here's what I say. You have to explore all options, ask questions, and do what's best for yourself. But if you are in a position in your life where you want to get a fresh start, then I would recommend active duty. Do that for 4 years or more. If you like it, continue. If you don't, you can always go into the reserve. The reason I say that is because you're going to be immersed in the active duty lifestyle where you learn more because you do it every single day. Your job, the lifestyle, when you're active duty. And it's very tough to go from Air Force Reserve to active duty. That's actually tougher, and it's not as easy to do. It does happen depending on the AFSC, which is the job, and if you're willing to relocate. If you're in a position in life where you already have your civilian career or are working towards it, and that's primary, or maybe you're a student, then you can do the reserve on part-time, on the side. And sometimes that works. So for me, since 2006, Air Force civilian, Air Force Reserve part-time, with the exception of the last 3 years where I've been on active duty. But I'll be going back to my Air Force civilian career June 1st, 2018. And instead of continuing on the reserve side, I'll have 22 years total time, not active duty time. I've said, you know what, it's time for me to clock out because there's other things that I want to do. Maybe teach, travel, go up the ladder on the civilian side as well, which I've never done. Believe that or not, never done that because I was juggling 2, citizen and airman, 2 jobs, and I was very happy with where I was, and I'm still very happy, very blessed, very fortunate. So I wanted to share that with you to ensure that you know what of the endless opportunities out there. I was talking to an individual that I retired, a friend of mine, and I said, when you arrived to this job, what did you think? Because you were active duty, but you were working with the reserve people or guard people. And he said, I had no idea what reserve or guard was. And that's not a good thing. I was in that position as well. So that's how come I say, definitely ask questions. Be curious. Get answers. Explore all options and do what's best for yourself. I've said this before, and I said this one time in a meeting or a briefing where I was briefing, and I said that the Air Force Reserve is the best kept secret because it provides many opportunities for us. I would say endless opportunities. Maybe it's a good fit for you, maybe it's not. Do what's best for yourself. If you have questions, write them below and I'll answer them. Have a good day.